I spent a lot of time thinking about Andrew Garfield. He's been on this press tour for his new movie, We Live in Time, and I'm just not sure I've seen anything like the way that he's showing up. A lot of vulnerability, a lot of sincerity, and the internet cannot get enough of it. The group chat's here to get into all of this. Let's go. I'm Elamin Abdul-Mahmoud, and this is Commotion. Look, before we get into all of this, I want to tell you that right now I'm in beautiful Vancouver, and I'm really lucky to be here for this Writers' Festival, but also if I sound a little hoarse, it's because it has involved some late nights with the book crowd. Honestly, like book people, they are my people. I'm just delighted to be here, but also it's taken a toll on the voice. Okay, listen, I think a part of spending your time reading about and talking about pop culture is that you maybe end up encountering a lot of eye rolling, like a lot of cynicism. There's a lot of suspicion in talking about pop culture. Like every time that someone famous does something public, the first thing you hear is, well, what's the thing that they're selling right now? And that's warranted, and I understand it. But at the risk of sounding really, really naive here, I don't think that's what's happening with Andrew Garfield right now. Yes, he's promoting this new movie, We Live in Time, but on the press tour, he's going to be very real. He's going to like really, really vulnerable places, or at least he seems to be doing that. So to talk about Andrew Garfield and why people can't get enough of either his sincerity or his performance of sincerity, that's up to you. Niko Stratis is here. Kathleen Newman-Bremang is here. Niko and Kathleen, hello, friends.
Good morning.
Hi, Elamin.
I've assembled like the sincerity Avengers, like the two of you.
Yeah.
Which is like that's what I love. That's what I love about this conversation. Okay, usually on the show like we dive right in, but I want to just spend a moment at the top of the show with Andrew Garfield. Is that okay with you, Niko and Kathleen? Can we do that for a minute?
Sure, I can.
Oh, absolutely.
We can deal with that.
So nice of you. Okay, so Exhibit A. He keeps running into the comedian Amelia Dimoldenburg for years and years on this red carpet and giving us all these viral moments. And then the internet wants him to go on a chicken shop date because that's the show that she hosts. This week, he finally ends up on her show, Chicken Shop Date, and it sounds like this.
If this wasn't here, do you think we'd actually have it go on a date? Do you think this has up the fact that we could have actually gone on a date at some point? Maybe.
Well, I don't know.
Okay, but like take out all the practicalities and the logic. I actually believe maybe we could have.
Okay, I cannot tell you the number of times that I texted Kathleen about that chicken shop date. We'll come back to that in a moment. Next, he shows up on Sesame Street.
Well, what's going on?
Oh, I don't know. You sure you want to listen?
Oh, Emma would love to listen.
Oh, I'm just thinking about my mum today. You know, she passed away not too long ago. And, I just miss her a lot.
Oh, I'm almost really sorry to hear that, Mr. Andrew.
Oh, no, it's okay. You don't have to say sorry. It's actually kind of okay to miss somebody.
It is?
Oh, yeah.
Emma always feels really sad when he misses somebody.
Oh, yeah, me too. Me too. But, that sadness, it's kind of a gift. It's kind of a lovely thing to feel, in a way, because it means you really loved somebody when you miss them.
Oh, no, I'm going to start crying. Okay, finally we have his appearance on the Modern Love podcast. He's reading an essay that was submitted to the New York Times. And in all of these years that celebrity guests have been reading essays on this podcast, there's never been a moment like this one.
She's a beautiful woman with gray in her hair. My parents no longer drive at night. Sorry. Get out. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's beautiful. Do you want to take a break?
No, it's okay.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Can I ask you if you just, this might take you out of it, so tell me to stop, but what's hitting you so much in this section?
Oh, dear. I don't know. I think what's hitting me, I don't know. It's the preciousness. It's the preciousness, as we've been talking about. And it's the longing for more. It's like we all pass with so much more to know, with so much more longing. Don't know why it's affecting me so deeply, but I feel this man's writing, and it feels like, for all of us, it feels like he's tapping into something so universal.
Yeah.
Okay, so while Kathleen collects herself, Niko, Niko, have you ever seen anyone promoting a movie who seems to be giving so much of themselves in a way that seems so deeply sincere?
You know how they were like the reports came out, they're playing Metallica to break people and in custody or whatever. I think if you just played those 3 clips to someone in a dark room, they would tell you anything in the world because all of their defenses are just obliterated forever. So thank you for that, first and foremost.
Of course.
It's a lot, right? Like it is a lot to hear someone be that sincere in an environment where we assume that someone is going to be sort of performing the obligations of their status as a famous person.
Yeah.
And we don't, sincerity is a currency by and large. We have put sincerity up for sale, and it is a thing that we buy in a lot of people. So it's alarming sometimes to hear someone say like, I'm going to be sincere in a way that's going to disarm you.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been thinking about this a lot, when we talked about doing this and just sort of thinking about it in general, like, well, what does it mean to hear somebody? And, I'm sort of catching myself because I'm like, what was the question you even asked me? Because I'm so sort of lost in this. Like, it is a lot to hear someone say, like, to make Elmo be vulnerable and say, let's talk about grief and loss and how it feels to like cry when you're not expecting to cry.
I mean, first of all, I can hear your voice breaking up as you answer that. But also, like in a very real way, your answer contained the answer to my question, which is, have you ever seen someone be this sincere? And when promoting a movie, because I think the answer is we kind of haven't. Kathleen, I'm going to kick this over to you because so much of your job is talking to people who are promoting something that they're very excited about, they're very proud of sort of promoting. But do you get this level of sincerity in any? Have you ever seen anything like this?
No. And because inherently, as Niko said, a promotion tour is insincere, right? It's a transaction. Like, I'll do this for you and you'll go see my movie, right? And increasingly, recently, the press tour is an extension of the performance these actors do in their movies, right? Like there's the theme dressing they do on red carpets. There's the playing up the chemistry between co-stars like we saw with Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper, Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney, right? But when it comes to Andrew, it does feel more real because even if he is, playing up the chemistry thing with Florence Pugh or talking about how he loves to cry to promote a movie that aims to make you cry, it feels very much on purpose and intentional. And I think 2 things can be true here. Like we are all very moved by his words. Like we all got very emotional. Niko's answer just made me like really tear up there. And so I think that this is genuinely a guy who is a romantic at heart, who does, cry at the drop of a hat, and is such a good actor that he can make you believe he's falling in love with anybody and can charm everyone, which he clearly has. I don't think one cancels out the other. I don't think that doesn't mean that like he and Amelia aren't going to fall in love for real and live happily ever after. Like, I think we can have both. I think we can.
Just a programming note that just for today, the CBC's been renamed the Crybaby Corporation. That is, I think that is where we are. Kathleen, you have interviewed Andrew Garfield before at TIFF. How did that encounter like shape your understanding of this whole press tour as he kind of rolls it out?
Well, okay, so a red carpet, as you know, is intense. Yeah. And I had, this really beautiful question planned about grief to ask him, but there was no time for that. He was getting like pulled away. So I asked him a pretty generic question about chemistry and specifically his chemistry with Florence Pugh. And he gave me a dissertation on why humanity isn't as connected as we used to be, on like the cerebral definition of chemistry. And what that told me about him is that he can't phone it in. I look at Andrew Garfield as a guy who really loves romance. And when you look at the world through a romanticized lens, I think it is emotional to see the beauty in everything, in the small things. And so what that encounter told me about him is that if you are in front of him, he is giving you everything he has. He is being thoughtful and sincere. And sure, there might be a strategy behind that. But honestly, I think he's just a guy looking for sincerity in an industry that's very fake. And when so many of his peers don't give that effort or energy, when it is their job to do that, it is refreshing. And I think, I'll take this over like a Jeremy Strong or an Adam Driver or like a Joaquin Phoenix who like notoriously hate doing press and give you answers like you're torturing them. Like I'll take this introspective, romantic, sincere approach any day, especially from a dude who is like what we think of when we think of masculinity, right? Like he's a superhero.
Yeah.
He's tall. He's hot. Like he's all of these things that you think of when you think of masculinity. And then he's also being vulnerable and like cracking his heart wide open.
Okay, just because you set it up as a dissertation, I think we should hear that clip. I think that is worth hearing. So let's just play Kathleen, Andrew Garfield's answer to Kathleen.
And I think it's getting harder and harder for us as human beings to actually connect with each other on a deep level. Like we are, by design, being kept apart, by design being kept isolated. There's a pandemic of loneliness and isolation, especially in the younger generations, but also in kind of every human being on this planet right now. And of course, it's because of technological advancements and etc. But I think chemistry can only be found and cultivated with time and with presence.
Niko, I do want to return to Earth for a moment here. And then and by that I mean that like I'm if you don't mind. But by that I mean like I'm imagining my friend Ash, who's a publicist listening to the show, right? She's a publicist and a manager, and she's like, her job is the machinery of the industry. Sure. And like Andrew Garfield is promoting a movie. He's promoting We Live in Time, which, by the way, I've seen it. It's incredible. He plays a man who's grappling with his wife's terminal cancer diagnosis. Vulnerability and grief are the big themes of this movie. So there's somebody listening to this who's like, guys, all three of you are crying. That's kind of wild, because clearly this is a part of a very clever and calculated move to market this movie. I don't know what to say to that person, so maybe you know what to say to that person.
I say to that person, let yourself go a little bit. Like, allow yourself to believe in magic. No, I mean,
yeah.
I get the cynicism of it too, to a certain degree, because I think that the sort of like the idea around sincerity and the idea around openness that we're talking about, these are, again, like I said, these are pieces of currency, right? And it's an easy thing to buy from a guy like Andrew Garfield because he's a handsome straight white guy, like with a nice accent and soft features. And like, so we buy that kind of sincerity because it's the kind of sincerity that we have been told is real, right? We can pine for his heterosexual relationship and all of these ideas. If he was anybody else, if he had an edge, that sincerity wouldn't feel as real because we've been told that sincerity is only real if it comes from certain people. So I think about that a lot, and I can understand that cynicism, but I can also think that like he is trying to say, in a lot of ways, I think Andrew Garfield is like the polar opposite of Russell Brand, wherein like he can sort of talk at length about these broad ideas, but in a very human way where he's striving for connection and he's not striving to like talk about some metaphysical thing that isn't real. He's saying like, we are all of us lonely, even me, massively famous guy. Remember I was Spider-Man. I was in the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus. Look it up. But he's still saying like, I can be all these things and I can still be lonely and I can still feel these things and I can still access these things. And Florence Pugh is also doing the same thing. We saw people responding to her on Instagram saying, this movie really made me feel about the loss of my own mother and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And she has also been having these conversations. Florence Pugh doesn't always get the press that Andrew Garfield does, but these are both people that are trying to do these things. And I think rather than looking at it entirely cynically, I think it's important to sort of look at it as like, what if we embraced this more? What if we allowed this in more? What if we said, what if you can be vulnerable in a way where you're still selling something? What if that's okay?
Kathleen, what's your reaction there as you just heard what Niko just said?
Well, I think especially in reaction to that Blake Lively press tour where we saw what that felt very insincere, where, there was an opportunity with the subject matter of her movie, which was about domestic violence, to like have a moment to talk about something real. This is, as Niko put it, exactly what Andrew and Florence are doing. They're saying, hey, our subject matter is heavy. It is tough. So let's go there with you. So yeah, they are selling us something. But again, I don't think that cancels it out and means that it's not real. And, I'm one of those people who were really moved and changed by how Andrew Garfield talks about grief. Yeah. And his appearance with Stephen Colbert hit me on like a personal and cellular level. My cousin passed of cancer last year, and around the same time that clip went viral. And when I was standing in front of him, I really wanted to like trauma dump on him and tell him that. Oh, wow. And that is, I think, part of this like weird parasocial thing that we have with celebrities, right? That maybe puts them in an awkward position. But I also think that his energy welcomes that. And I do think it's a really beautiful thing that he is able to say something like that on a talk show in this, again, very like controlled, contrived environment. And he touches us on a deep level. And I really also, the person who's just like, oh, whatever, I roll, this isn't real. I want them to open their hearts a little bit more. Genuinely. I want them to be able to experience this lovely thing that we're all kind of experiencing around this press tour. But it's also, Niko's right. You know, like we looked at Anne Hathaway very differently when she was being super vulnerable and sincere. Same with like a Rachel Zegler. Like we look at different people differently when they're doing this. And when it is a straight, good-looking white man like Andrew Garfield, we receive it, I think, in a different way. And so that's something that maybe we should all think about. But I also don't want us to take away from how this is making everyone feel and that we're all collectively feeling something.
Yeah.
But okay, so that's the part that I want to be sensitive to, Niko. I want to be sensitive to this idea that if people are suspicious is because there are actually pretty good reasons to be suspicious. There are plenty of figures in our current pop culture moment where like they are a site for controversy because we don't know what to make of their sincerity. I think of Taylor Swift as like the number one person when it comes to this particular thing because she's a billionaire. She's the richest, entertainer that there is right now. But also, like, her fans have a deeply sincere relationship to her work. And then the cynics, I think of which you are maybe one, are sort of standing outside and they're saying, this feels constructed to me. Or at least a part of this relationship feels artificial. And then, like, you kind of get this Andrew Garfield moment and it stands as this, like, really sharp contrast. So I don't fault the people who kind of show up with all these suspicions because they've been trained to. And in different contexts, you are one of those people you don't, like you do have your suspicions about certain pop culture figures. So like where do you see sincerity kind of breaking through? What do you use to assess whether someone's like, yeah, I think this person's being real with me right now?
This is going to sound really hokey, maybe, but like I think you can feel it when it feels real. Like yes, Andrew Garfield is selling us something, but he's selling us something we should actually all own, which is the capability to talk about grief in a way that is public and not hidden away. He's crying in public, which is a thing that should be done in public and not hidden away. I grew up, look, I'm a trans woman, so like I grew up in a very masculine environment as a very masculine person, and I was told to hide those things away. And it's been a lot of time to unlearn all of these ideas. And I knew this was eventually going to be a trap to get me to talk about Taylor Swift. So congratulations, you did it.
It always is, Niko. It always is. But
when I see that, there is insincerity there, but I also realize that a lot of it just sort of feels forced. And a lot of it feels like, that this is a thing that people will latch onto. So they will buy more, so they will get more invested. And that's when it starts to feel like a veneer appears. And it's a very fine and delicate line. And I don't think at the end of the day, it also doesn't matter. Like if someone feels a really sincere feeling from Taylor Swift or Noah Kahan or whatever, stuff that I'm not necessarily down for, but maybe it's not for me anyways, then more power to you. And I think the thing that we need to get used to more is like that all sincerity needs to be sort of supported and uplifted. Like if someone is connected to whatever, if it's Taylor Swift, if it's Creed, if it's Andrew Garfield, I'm throwing Creed into the mix just because I'm like thinking like, what is the thing that people will look down on? Yeah. But, there's a lot of people that really take something away from stuff like that. Yeah. I know that you do enough karaoke to know like Creed is in your wheelhouse. But you know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what I think about these things so much as like, are people feeling like they are allowed to be vulnerable and that they see a vulnerability in somebody else and they're walking away from it feeling like, okay, I am going to try to be more vulnerable in my real life. I'm going to try to be more real. I'm going to try to be less like, there's an irony epidemic, right? Like I'm going to try to sort of shed that away and move into a place where I can be a more honest version of myself.
I'm so glad that you brought up this irony epidemic idea because like there was this piece in Dazed from yesterday about and it was a brilliant piece.
I'm thinking specifically of this piece, yes.
Yeah, and this piece was sort of saying like the idea of approaching all art with some kind of irony, with the willingness to be like, I'm going to start by making a joke, which is a very common sort of internet relationship to art, has kind of ruined consuming art for a lot of people. And like the piece sort of mentions Ethel Cain, who is a brilliant artist, who's like, please stop making memes about my music because I'm also asking you to sit with some kind of heaviness. And you seem to have very little tolerance for doing so because of the memes and because of the jokes that you want to make. Or at least it's like preventing you from connecting with the music, which is like The reason I wanted to have this conversation, Kathleen, is because I think there is something about our desire to move through the world and consume art that really connects with us and hits us in a meaningful way. Is that like we have to be able to assess when something is real and when something is not. And then when you see this Andrew Garfield press tour, to me, the thing that makes it different than any other press tour is that at any turn of the conversation, he's sort of calling out the machinery of that sort of constructs the conversations of pop culture to begin with, you know? And so like when you and I are texting about his chicken shop date with Amelia, it's because at every turn he's like, it's weird that there are cameras here because if there weren't, then like our chemistry would feel different and we could actually explore whether it's real or not. And I just don't think I've seen somebody do that before. Have you?
No. And I think that's why I buy it. You know, like I think that, listen, Amelia and Andrew are both very good at their jobs. Yeah. And they know, you know, like that dopamine hit you get from flirting, that rush, that's singular, it's special. And Amelia is good at delivering that awkward thrill. And if you've like seen Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, you know that he is too, right? Like it's a perfect energy match, which is why I think they are soulmates. But it is also the way that he is trying to like break down the walls and say like, hey, if the cameras weren't here, would this actually be real? Like, am I feeling something real here? Like he is making us think about, I think he is actually making us be like, hey, is this real? Like, I think in the moment he's truly trying to find that out from Amelia, which is why I think like genuinely, I think they're going to fall in love and be together forever. I buy it. But that's also me just not looking at it ironically, because I'm just not that person. And I don't think he is either. And I do in this, like this time of celebrity that we're in, this time of the internet where everything is a joke. And like when you are corny on Maine, people roll their eyes at you and make fun of you. And I mean, you know, both of us love to be corny on Maine
all the time.
Now, maybe this is our time. And Andrew Garfield is ushering in the time for people who just don't want to make a joke about everything and feel something and believe in romance and love and want to cry openly with everyone. And that's okay.
I think like this is exactly what I was hoping to get out of this conversation is that like, this is a moment for the corny ones. We've been waiting for this for a minute. I'm like, this is our revenge. You know, like Niko, like you said, you want so desperately for the magic to be real because the world is such a dumpster fire right now. So in a way, like Andrew Garfield kind of feels like a bit of a bomb. So if you look at the broader culture, I got like 30 seconds left here. You look down the road, do you think there's going to be more space for celebrities to do something like this?
I hope so, but I hope it doesn't happen right away because it would start to feel forced and it would start to feel fake. And someone would say, I want what Andrew Garfield has. And they say, go cry on camera, go to a chicken shop and cry. You know, like, and then that's when it starts to feel fake. And I just want people to see this sort of vulnerability and think, I'm going to take this away and I'm going to try to incorporate this into my own life. But still also make your jokes if you want to make jokes. It's a fine line.
Okay, but like, okay, I love that. I love the idea that you're like giving people the permission to feel their jokes and make their jokes. That's beautiful. But also, I think like it's a challenge. It's a challenge to say, hey, if you feel a feeling, why don't you try this wild thing of expressing it and sharing it with the world?
Please feel your feelings.
At the risk of connecting with another person. Oh my God. It's the absolutely corny baby corporation. That's the day. That's the day that we're having. Niko, Kathleen, I'm going to leave it there, but I'm just so grateful for this conversation. I'm going to cry about it in just a minute, but I really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Of course.
I want to give you both a hug.
Oh
yeah, I love you all. You know?
This is the nicest time. Niko Stratis is a freelance culture critic and regular crier. She writes the newsletter Anxiety Shark. Kathleen Newman-Bremang is probably crying right now. She's deputy director of Refinery 29 Unbothered. And that is it for the show today. Listen, before I go, I mentioned earlier that I'm in Vancouver. We're talking about all this sincerity. I'm here for the Vancouver Writers Festival. It's a really great festival. It's a really beautiful festival. It's my third year being here. And like on the opening night of this festival, I had the privilege of hosting the opening night event, which is called Finding Joy in Turmoil. And it was 8 authors, anyone from Heather O'Neill to Tanya Talaga, coming out, and for like 8 to 9 minutes talking about a thing that gives them joy in a difficult time. And you know what? There was sincerity in the room, and people welcomed it, and it was really beautiful. So my word to you is like, I don't know, go find your equivalent of that community, wherever that might be. It might be a book club. It might be like a texting friend. I don't know where it is, but there's something magical about gathering with another person and leaning into that sincerity. My name is Alamin Abdul Mahmoud. I'm not having a cynical day. I hope you're not either. Hey, I'm going to be back on Monday, but for the rest of this week, my pal Brad Simon Play is hosting. I'll see you next week.